Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Pure Digital Passion Podcast. I'm your host, Moses Kemibaro. This year marks a momentous occasion for the African media and advertising industry. And after a 16-year hiatus, the 25th annual PAMRO Media Research Conference is making its grand return to Nairobi from the 14th to the 16th of September 2025. The theme is Trust and Truth, the role of media research, a topic that sits at the very heart of our industry's current challenges and future opportunities. I followed PAMRO's journey for years and fondly remember attending the 2012 conference in Uganda when my good friend Joe Otin invited me to attend. And that was really an amazing experience. And at that point, actually, Joe was the president of PAMRO. So to give us an exclusive preview of this landmark event, we're joined by two of the most respected figures in the Kenyan and African media research. First, Joe Otin, who I've already mentioned, the CEO of The Collective and the former president of PAMRO, and also the 2023 Piet Smith PAMRO Achiever of the Year and chairman of the Kenya Organizing Committee for this year's conference right here in Nairobi, Kenya. We're also delighted to have a legend in own right, Maggie Ireri, the CEO of TIFA Research, an award-winning research professional recognized by PAMRO for innovation in research methodologies, and also a key member of the organizing committee leading the sponsorship aspect of this event. Joe and Maggie, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Moses.
So I'd like to
Thank you.
start with you, Joe. And I think from my point of view, really, your involvement with PAMRO is extensive. I mean, it was almost 15 years ago that I attended the first one. And more importantly, you've been a president, you've been a board member, you've also been an award winner, and now you're part of the conference organizing committee as the chair. Can you share your PAMRO origin story and tell us how this all began and how you've been involved since the beginning? And also what drew you to the organization and its mission in the first place?
Well, thanks. Thank you so much, Moses, for inviting us to this podcast. And we're delighted to be here. I'm so happy to be here to talk about what's happening with PAMRO. And so what's my origin story? I guess my origin story is I was heading the media division of Ipsos in Africa. And had basically gotten there from the times it was Stedman Group, and I was basically involved in the media research and media monitoring. And so being a member of PAMRO was fundamental. But what I really got from PAMRO was the ability of this organization to have so much influence in the commercial success across Africa. Why? Because we saw that media research is able to really have a great influence in the thriving nature of the media industry. And for me, it was a no-brainer. Be a member of this because it really helps. One of the things that we saw was people like Coca-Cola, talking about where it was spending its money in Africa during this big economic recession that we had in 2008. And what they did was they looked at all the markets where they had, good media research, and they chose to keep their budgets, actually strengthen their budgets during that recession. In those markets where they had visibility and they could basically calculate their ROI. But in the markets where they didn't have data, they pulled their budgets. So that's the first thing. First thing is that media research and the work that PAMRO is doing has a great influence in the commercial success across Africa. The second thing that made me want to be part of this is this very robust network. And the robust network is made up of, initially was just media researchers, basically talking about very scientific papers, you generally need to have, a sniff of Epsom salts to just keep your mind, vigorous during some of those discussions. However, we started to see more and more participation from the media houses and TV networks across Africa. We also started to see advertising agencies participating, and eventually we started to see more of the authorities and governments participating. So we're talking about executives from these organizations at the highest level. And being able to share information with them, being able to share our own experiences was really something that has helped this industry grow across the board. So, and across, to every single corner of Africa. So that's my origin story, and that's, why I'm still here.
Thanks so much for that, Joe. And I think one thing I picked away is that, data, the value of data, the value of insight actually has been significant in actually supporting advertisers and growing the media space as a whole. And I think this is a perfect segue to Maggie. Maggie, thank you so much for joining us. You too are also a PAMRO award winner and a leading voice in African and Kenyan media research. What has been your journey with PAMRO like? And, what has been the mission to standardize measurement that's resonated with you throughout your career?
Yes, so my journey with PAMRO started a long time ago, probably in the late 90s. And that's the time I was working for the Stedman Group. Um, and Stedman Group was founded by Roger Stedman, who in Kenya is known as the father of audience research. At that point, Stedman was leading the forefront of trying to get Kenyan companies to use and actually uh, pay for audience research data for media planning. And I was glad to be at the forefront of seeing how Roger Stedman and working with people like us and Jules, who joined us later, how he would package the need for media research. And at some point, we realized that we were doing media research in Kenya. By that time, we were doing it in Tanzania, we were doing it in Uganda, but the methodologies were varied. And by the time we were joining PAMRO, there was an opportunity to standardize the methodologies. It therefore meant that because we were dealing with very major clients that had an office in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and even South Africa, beyond where we were, they needed to be able to buy audience data and use it for media planning using the same currency. And at that point, PAMRO was, the ideal organization to work with or even be a member of. And I remember in those early days sitting with the team that was there because I was still a very young researcher and seeing how the questionnaires were being harmonized, what was the rationale. At some point, we did work with fantastic people who are very knowledgeable from South Africa in standardizing how we measure wealth quartiles for consumers in Kenya. And that was what became to be known as the LSM. So my journey with PAMO started then when Kenya had no audience, had audience research data that was not really regular, and the methodology was not hinged on an African standard. And that's how PAMRO came in and we participated as a company. Later on, I did move to Uganda and I worked there for 5 years. And I was quite happy to be walking around the Uganda market, talking to advertisers and radio stations and TV stations and any media owner, telling them that we have a methodology that has been reviewed by experts across Africa in a methodology that is standardized. And that really did help us get credibility, and the data was then used as a yardstick. And yes, because I did move around Africa at the very early days with Stedman, Uganda, Tanzania, Zambia, Ghana, and by this time, audience research was really, really a new thing. I got to the point where I appreciated the standardization of the methodologies, and happy to be here hosting the 25th PAMRO event because it's like nostalgic. I remember the things that we did, and a lot of people maybe watching this podcast will be saying, the standards are already there, but they don't know how hard it was to get consensus across various markets, how hard it was to ensure that we piloted the standards and then come up with what you call a gold standard. So that's my journey with PAMRO. And I continue to be very active in doing audience research in Kenya using the PAMRO standards.
Thank you so much for that, Maggie. So I'd like to come back to you, Joe, and actually this question goes to both of you. It's been 16 years, 16 whole years, which seems like a long time, since Primrose was last in Nairobi. And you're both key figures in this organizing committee that's brought this event back to the country. So what is the significance of this homecoming for Kenya and for the broader African media landscape? Maybe going first with you, Joe.
Well, thanks. Thanks, Moses. I think both Maggie and I were part of the organizing committee 16 years ago. And it was headed by George Waititu, the CEO of Stedman Group at the time. But so there's obviously been a lot of differences. We've come a long way. I think PAMRO has also come a long way in 16 years. But I'd say one of the things I'd say is the difference between I think what I had seen happening during that, I think one of the most memorable PAMRO conferences that was held here in 2009 was that advertising agencies and the brands began to participate in a different way. And we had significant presentations that were made by people like George Luther of Scanad at the time. There was presentations by people like Lenny Nanga. We had quite a number of marketing directors making some significant presentations, and I think that was a pivot. There was a shift in how the rest of the industry that benefits from media research was able to participate at that conference. And since then, we've seen much more participation. I talked about Coca-Cola participating. Diageo has participated, significantly in terms of what they're doing from a digital perspective. And I think that this is something that we're going to see tremendously at this year's conference.
Great, thanks so much for that. Maggie, I'd love to also hear your perspectives, 16 years on, what has changed, what has shifted, and what does this mean for Kenya and the African media landscape?
And that's a question that is so timely because I was reflecting. We are hosting after so many years, especially to the delegates who are going to come from Kenya. What are they going to walk away with from the conference? And I just want to go back to the theme of the conference, which is trust and truth. That currently media, in terms of the word trust, media is responsible for shaping opinions. And truth means that the media should cover facts accurately so that the audiences can then get to know the truth, isn't it? But currently, we're in a situation of the digital world, social media. In Kenya, especially in the last 2 years, where there's been a protest, we are looking at the social media to give us real-time news on what's happening. If there's going to be a protest, should I leave the house or not? We're seeing situations where content is recycled. Very graphic, horrific stories are recycled on social media. So for me, when the theme is about trust and truth, I think one of the key things that we should be walking away with, and I believe we will, from from the conference is, if media is to be trusted, how can research inform how we determine a media house that is trusted or not trusted, or even social media? If media is supposed to give Kenyans the truth or Africans the truth, how do we use research to ensure that we can be able to say this was something truthful as it was aired and this was something not truthful? So for me, I think the conference is very timely, and I just want to say that the Kenyans are known to be very high social media users. I've also seen a lot of content from Nigerians, Tanzanians, South Africans. I think it's an opportunity for us to share and begin to discuss. And one of the panelists, I know there's going to be a panel for the advertisers, brand owners who are buying advertising, and we also have a panel for the advertising agencies. I think from those two, because I want to buy media, and I want to advertise on media, and I want to ensure that I can trust the media house, and there's enough truth, and also at the same time, I use data to inform this decision.
Great. So again, coming back to the trust and truth theme of our event, I think you've brought out some really important points, Maggie, in terms of the context or the scenario that we now live in 16 years later. Joe, from a agency and brand strategy perspective, what would you say about the theme, and what does this mean for PAMRO and the African continent in the context of where we are today?
Good. Well, thanks, Moses. I think we talk about trust and we talk about truth, and I guess there's also I think at one time we were at the British Embassy, British High Commission, having a conversation about freedom of speech, and I made the mistake of saying that what we were all seeking was truth, and I was very sharply corrected that freedom of speech had really nothing to do or was exclusive from truth. And I find that such an interesting, an interesting thing, because one of the things about media credibility is it able to give you an objective view of what's going on and give you both sides of the argument, both sides of the coin. And so what we are seeing with the rise of technology and of AI is that It enhances the creative's effort to be able to hyper personalize and do things that they've never really been able to do at speeds that were inconceivable just a few years ago. However, when you have bad actors, it gives them the opportunity to be able to create such massive misinformation campaigns. We keep seeing this on social media. We keep seeing this on YouTube, the YouTube Shorts, the kind of misinformation campaigns that bad actors are putting out there. So I feel, and I think one of the things that we know here in Africa is that our policymakers are pretty much out of step with what is currently going on. And I feel that in this conference, we're going to have quite a number of people speaking about what is happening with AI from a perspective of a business, from a perspective of communicators, from a perspective of broadcasters. And this is most likely going to give our policymakers an opportunity to understand what is it that we need to look at and what kind of decisions do we need to make to ensure that the environment is safe and productive for the stakeholders.
Great. Thanks so much, Joe, for your comments. I'd like to come back to you, Maggie. We've got speakers like Geoffrey Odundo from Nation Media Group who are attending. And my point of view, or rather my question to you is what does their participation signal about the media owner's stake in this conversation around trust and verifiable data?
Very true. We are quite honored to have the likes of Geoffrey Odundo, the CEO of Nation Media Group in Africa, and also Washira Waruru, who's the CEO of Royal Media Services. Those are big brands in Africa. Now, their participation is really, really good because audience research has advertising agencies, it has the advertiser, and of course, the media houses who carry the platform. And one of the papers that will be presented by Mr. Geoffrey Odundo is quite interesting, and I thought this is basically a paper that seeks to make us rethink how we are operating. So his argument is in his paper, I'm not saying this is the title of the paper, but what he says that researchers, advertising agency, media houses, and media houses, we're talking about digital, non-digital houses, have to collaborate to exist sustainably in this market. And I don't have details of the paper, but I believe that what he'll be sharing with us is saying we should not be competing. We should be collaborating. We should be fine. The pie is so big. How can we ensure that we grow it? Or how can we collaborate in instances where one person has a strength and another one has a weakness? So for me, I feel that we're getting to the point where the media are saying we can, and they have a very powerful voice because the media are the ones who connect us to all the audiences. But they're saying, how can we collaborate? And collaboration is a good sign that it means that in the dynamic changing landscape of AI, as Joe has talked about it, fake news. We also are now seeing digital brands like the big tech companies coming into Kenya and getting audiences directly. How do you collaborate and still ensure that the media industry is sustainable? And this is falling against the backdrop. I'm sure you've seen quite a number of things that are happening in the media. Media houses are closing down, they're laying off staff. But the question is, how do you collaborate to sustainably ensure that the media landscape supports all actors, especially those in Africa?
No, I think that is so pertinent given the times we're in. We are seeing so many challenges, especially local media, African media, the role that big tech are playing, the social media platforms like Meta, the big, search engines and so forth like Google. And really, let's be honest, they're disrupting the status quo in ways that none of us could have imagined. But that, as you pointed out, I think, the conversations and having someone like Geoffrey on board really, I think is going to be, something exciting to see and hear. I know that as an organization, Nation Media is really trying to transform themselves digitally. And we can see some of the early signs of that progress in terms of how they're sort of aligning to this new reality. Which brings you back to you, Joe. I think you have also the other side of the coin in terms of, giving us a perspective from the chief marketing officers. We have brands like, Safaricom and KCB are going to be at panels at PAMRO. We've got agency leaders from organizations like WP Scan Group and Dentsu. And what are some of the key commercial tensions you expect to see debated around the areas of AI, the creator economy, and of course, the return on investment of some of these new areas of media?
Okay, thanks. I mean, we want to really move away from just the academics. We want to move to what kind of decisions are the guys in the trenches making. And so we asked ourselves, who are the people who are controlling, the larger budgets in our market, and what kind of decisions do they have to make in order to be able to get return on investment for their brand strategies. So we chose the foremost CMOs who are right in the middle of all these changes that are going on, and we wanted to have a better understanding of the kind of where they see the value of AI as they make those decisions for brand strategy. And so that's the kind of conversation that they're going to be having, and that's the line of questioning and discussions that we're going to have. And for the agencies, you'll see that everybody on the agency panel has been around for donkey years. And they'll be talking about, from the days they used to use rulers and pencils to draw up spreadsheets and plan their media, to now pretty much, just using sophisticated software to be able to help you to understand where you can get the best bang for your buck. And so we want to understand, where have we come from? And I think with an understanding of the history, we will actually get a better understanding of where we're going to go and where this is heading to. And so, and then of course, we also just wanted to understand what's going on with the creator economy, because the creator economy pretty much came in and started to eat the agency's lunch. However, AI has come and smacked that taste out of their mouth, and we wanted to know how they're dealing with it, and generally what the future is going to look like. So we're moving away from just the academics. We want to go to what's happening practically, and so that we can equip our executives in the advertising agencies, those who are taking care of brands, the broadcast networks, to have great information that they can use for their strategies going forward.
I think there's something really exciting about the fact that, you have people who are going to be on those panels who are also on the panels back 16 years ago. And the fact that they can kind of reflect and juxtapose what things were like then and what things are like now. And more importantly, areas like the creator economy, which of course is picking up media, media spend, the aspect of AI, which is essentially disrupting everything. And really, I think that's brilliant because it's that almost institutional memory around how things worked, how they're working, and those people, I think, are the best place to sort of navigate the future practices because they've been able to see the evolution of that, coming from the very early days of even just establishing standards. And then coming back to you, Maggie, I think let's talk about the delegate experience. The country reports are always a major highlight. And as a researcher, can you explain why these reports are so valuable to provide insights that delegates can't get anywhere else? And I'm going to be very honest with you guys because when I went to Uganda back in 2012, at some point I thought I was in the wrong conference because I couldn't even understand the dialect or the language that was being used around media. I remember hearing panels, I think, for the first time. Just the nature of the conversation and communication required you to be an insider to even decipher what was being discussed. But coming back to you, Maggie, as sort of as somebody who's a dyed-in expert and somebody who's been in this space for so long, what are these reports and why are they so valuable for the stakeholders, including those who are going to maybe be attending for the first time as delegates?
Moses, I hope you'll also ask me about the fun part of the conference at some point. But anyway,
Absolutely.
so let me
Absolutely.
talk, let me talk about the country reports. So in the various countries that audience research is done, the organizations that collect data submit reports to PAMRO, and it's basically kept in a very good library. But the beauty about this country reports, bearing in mind that the methodology has been harmonized because the questionnaires have been harmonized. It therefore means that if you're going to look at a report for Kenya, for Uganda, or for whichever South Africa, Nigeria, it means that you're going to get the same indicators, whether it's going to be share, reach, and even audience profiles. So if you are an organization or an individual who's interested to know how does the media landscape look across in Africa, how does it change by country or by region, the country reports are what I would say, in line with the theme, are your truth in terms of audiences. And it is also quite important to say that even though they have harmonized the methodologies, there are some country nuances that are also highlighted in this report. So it's not going to be read, share, etc. It also tells us what are the differences in terms of the audiences when you're moving from one country to another. So, in summary, it is access to a continental audience research dashboard that allows any person, whether you're a media buyer, media planner, to understand the landscape using the same indicators. And the minute you've gone through one report, you can go through all the other reports very easily because they are very, very similar. So that's something that delegates should look forward to when they come for this meeting or for the conference.
Thank you. I think if I was to sum it up, it's really this opportunity to get the value of insight on a country level basis and then also at a macro level across the continent. And those nuances are so valuable because they help us inform how media is bought, how media is understood, and more importantly, how it can be fully leveraged across the board. Now, let's get to the fun part. And I think this question goes out to both of you, Maggie and Joe. And I'd like to start with you, Joe. Beyond the formal sessions, PAMRO is legendary for high level networking, for fun, from your experience. What are some of the unique value propositions of those connections that people can make at the event? And can you share an example of how these interactions spark real collaborations? Starting with you, Joe.
Well, thanks, Moses. PAMRO's events, annual conferences, are actually very exclusive events. We're really looking at about 100 to 150, top level executives. So you're very much in the room, sitting in a room with people who are decision makers, and people who have a need, and that need is to grow their brands, is to grow their broadcast networks, is to have more of an influence in terms of the advertising expenditure as agencies. And of course, the regulators, they want to know the flow of the current so that they can generally stay ahead and be able to support the industry. So one of the things that I always used to give myself from the Stedman days, I used to give myself a challenge. Knowing that the company was going to sponsor, my attendance, my flight, the accommodation. I always used to give myself a challenge to come back with a deal that was at least 2 times or 3 times the cost of the cost of the conference to us. And Moses, I can tell you for sure that I always came back with a deal that was 10 times or more the value of the spend that we put into my attendance at the conference. It's really because of that. You're sitting with decision makers. You know what the need is. We have the services to provide that, and so the conference provided an excellent network and an excellent opportunity to make certain things happen.
Great. Maggie, I'd also love to hear your perspective around, the networking and the informal aspects and how these, essentially can add value beyond the formal sessions.
So, just to start by saying, some of the people who are presenting papers, I've just looked at some of the names. We have presenters from Uganda, we have a presenter from Japan, South Africa, India. So, already confirmed, you're going to network with people from those countries. We also have delegates who have already paid. I don't have details of their names, but I know they're from Asia, they're from Europe, and of course, the rest of Africa. So in Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya, we'll be hosting delegates, a diverse range of delegates across the world, and it's an opportunity for me or for any person attending that meeting to engage with them. The other thing I'd like to say, and just echoing what Joe has said, Kenya, Kenya is one of the hubs in Africa. Of course, we have other hubs like Nigeria and South Africa. So most of the time, we find that if a brand is coming from Europe or from Asia and they want to set up they want to set up a factory or launch a product, they're likely to launch it in Nairobi, South Africa, Nigeria, and then those countries are used to spread beyond. So if you're a researcher looking for opportunities from across the world, they need to be in Nairobi because you could be talking to delegates from all over the world that could give you that project that could make a difference in your business. And then I'd just like to also not talk about the fun part. So Sometimes we may, and somebody asked me this question: is it going to be about papers, and talking about statistics and all that? I said no. As we just already indicated, you have a diverse profile of presenters and speakers. However, I want to talk about the Sunday, which is the day one. There's a drink up on Sunday night at Sankara Hotel. No presentations, and we say let's keep it light, and we will be networking, socializing over a drink. And then on Monday we have a whole day's event. Monday evening there's a networking dinner, and we're going to have a sponsor whom we should be unveiling in the next couple of days. And they promised to keep that evening exciting, and we will be. They promised us that if we come for the networking at 6, they believe that you leave at 1 minute past midnight because it's going to be so much fun. So it's quite good. And then on Tuesday, we have the gala dinner. And the gala dinner essentially begins with some pre drinks. And there's a bit of tension because everyone is wondering who will be given the award for the best paper. So, people are going to be betting and saying it could be you, it could be you, because you already had all the papers. And then after the drink up, we go to the gala dinner. Fantastic food. We're having the gala dinner at Sankara, and their chefs are amazing. So we're going to have dinner, and then drum rolls, the winners will be announced. And then they're going to get some awards. And then after that, I believe that we're going to have some music and dance until Joe, who's our local organizing committee, says it's time for us to close the conference. So that's a fun part of the conference, and I really encourage anyone who's interested in research, a combination of research and fun, to show up for this conference.
Well, I can actually remember my fun or the fun times I had at the PAMRO conference back in 2012. I think it was at Munyonyo in Uganda, and I can assure you it was. Let's just say the networking and the social side of it was fantastic, and I actually made some lifelong friends in the industry from attending that event. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have done both. But looking beyond the conference, and I'd like to bring this back to you, Joe, and both of you really to respond to this. Where do you see the future of media research in Africa heading? And what role must PAMRO play in shaping standards for a complex digital and AI-driven future when it comes to media?
All right. Well, as we talk about the networking, I think the key thing for the gala dinner is, even though you come in your tuxedos, do bring your dancing shoes, because the drinks will be chilled, the conversations will be warm, but the dancing will be hot. So, um, but much more to serious matters in terms of where we see this going. I think the key thing is that we want to see, we want to have those conversations about how brands can unlock growth, right? And how they can unlock growth by having a better understanding of consumer behavior. We know that the agencies are talking about how they can return to a point where they can influence the advertising spend, where they can stem the tide and influence advertising spend, because there's been a lot of shakeup in that department. And then, of course, the media houses, they want to know how they can monetize their premium content, because as they shifted from analog to digital. Something moved, and we're trying to understand where this whole thing is. But if we do not have ways of financing premium content or investing in premium content, then premium content is actually going to fizzle away. And eventually, all we'll be doing is investing in premium content that is not ours, that is imported from abroad. So I think those are some of the key conversations that we're going to be having in this, here. And at the heart of it is very much media research, which would really help us to understand what content should we be focusing on, how are people behaving towards that content, and eventually being able to convince the financiers that this is the direction that we need to go, so we can build some critical mass and ensure that we create that momentum and move forward.
Thank you so much for that, Joe. What about you, Maggie? What are your thoughts around the future of media research in Africa?
That's a good question. And for me, I am hoping that the future will capture an expectation from quite a number of people, and I think both of you being in the digital space will agree. And the expectation is what I call holistic platform measurements. Because right now we're very good at measuring audiences for radio, TV, and print, but we are not very good at measuring other platforms like digital. So we say X percentage of nationals in Nigeria, Uganda, South Africa have access to internet, but we don't have details about when, how, for how long. So we need to get to a point where we can have a methodology that is can be used across Africa, that covers all the platforms for that. The second thing I'm hoping in terms of the future of PAMRO is that, and here I want to speak respect with a lot of respect because I believe there's room for both. A lot of the big tech companies are using a lot of passive measurements and big data analytics to determine their audience levels and so on. I feel that there's in the future Pambo should be exploring how can our regular audience measurements be used to either A, verify, or can we use the passive measurement that is used online by the big tech companies to complement what you're doing. I still stand that PAMRO has the gold standard for audience measurement, but there are other methodologies that are out there that we cannot continue to ignore. And advertisers are making decisions based on that data. And then they come back to us and say, we made a decision based on that data, but we are not sure that that data is actually accurate. So how can we bring truth and trust to the big data analytics for the big tech companies? It's I think it's a tall order, but if you don't dream, then life is not worth it. So I'm dreaming for Pamro that we'll get to that point at some point.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I'd also like to possibly think about, for everyone who's listening and anyone who might be considering attending, what's your closing message? And really, why is the 25th PAMRO conference in Nairobi a must attend, an event that you must attend this year? And maybe starting with you, Joe, what's the call to action here? Why do we need to come?
Well, Moses, I think we put together a very good program, and one that would rival the best that we've had so far. And we've got people, really very much at the top of the industry, and guys like Charles Morita from Google. He's our keynote speaker, so he's coming to challenge our media houses, coming to challenge the networks, the agencies, the and the administrators and the regulators. We've got the heads of the key media houses, the largest media houses in the country. So people like Washiro Waruru of Royal Media Services and Jeff Odundo of Nation Media Group. And then, the foremost CEOs, in our country. And this is just a sample of some of the other great CMOs that we have, Chief Marketing Officers. So we've got Zizwe Gundla from Safaricom. We have Rosalind Gishuru from KCB. We have Mark Mugisha from Diageo. These are guys who really know, they can talk a little bit about the decisions that they have to make to give us an insight to where, the puck is moving, where everything is going to. And then when you talk about the agency leaders, you've got people like Lenny Nganga from Saracen. You have Samantha Kiprui from Dentsu, Miriam Kagwa, who's the acting CEO of WPP Scan Group. And then, of course, Mike Wowsy or Mike Otieno from Wowsy, talking about the creator economy. So, we have a really good group of guys who know where everything is going to. And you really want to be sitting amongst them as they create the narrative to the commercial success in Africa. Where is Africa, going? And from my, the many years that I've been sitting in PAMRO as a board member, as a president, I've seen the kind of changes that can happen to, to advertising spends, to the success of broadcast networks, and to the kind of decisions that policymakers are making, very much happening right there at the conference. And so I think that, it's important for you to be a part of that. so that you can then have, you can be able to understand where things are going and to actually benefit from being a part of this exclusive group.
Fantastic, Joe. What about you, Maggie? What are your thoughts around your closing message and why should everyone attend this event this year?
So to add to what Joe has said, Pan African Media Conferences is the only Pan African forum that brings together the media owners, the marketers, the agencies, and researchers. And this forum, I believe, will then redefine the future of media research moving forward because of the kind of papers that we have. Because the papers are going to be thought provoking, they're going to be asking, questioning norms that have been there for a long time. So I believe that anyone who attends this forum will basically get access to fresh insights, the cross-country benchmarks, and also from the papers and the Q&A sessions, we're going to walk away with practical strategies on how we can navigate the changing media landscape. So, and just to finish in terms of why I attend, I just want to say that the Pan African Media Research Annual Conference 2025, the 25th in 2025, is basically where I think we shall remember that you have built a partnership from this conference. Your standards about media research are going to be shaped. And then over and above that, you're going to work out with some truth and trust, or ways to determine truth and trust about media and media research in Kenya. So it's a must attend forum in a nutshell.
Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, Maggie. Thank you so much, Joe. I think that preview is incredibly insightful, and I think we've given everyone a good reason to learn more about PAMRO's organization, but also to attend this conference, the 25th in 2025, as Maggie has reminded us. And I think it's more than just an event. I think it's really a pivotal moment. We can see how AI, big tech, technologies, platforms, methodologies are all changing. And I think from an African perspective, really to align with the critical issues and of course, trust in data and the future of media in Africa. I think to our audience, the 25th PAMRO Annual Media Research Conference, just to remind you, takes place from the 14th to 16th of September. It's going to be happening at the Sankara Hotel in Nairobi. And to secure your spot and be part of this crucial conversation, please visit pamro.org to register. And we hope to see you there. I happen to be also be attending, and I'm really delighted again to be participating in this event after quite a few years. So thank you so much for joining us for this conversation, and we'll catch you in the next one.